In position.
In position. Who's going to play the opening?
I just like watching you walk around. All right, let me see if I can find it.
We are here.
Good evening, Melrosians the world over. I am Tom Catalini.
I'm Sam Hammer.
And I am Tom Shampoo on the move.
On the move. You landed.
Yes,
I was a
I
little
did.
worried about you for a minute before the theme song played.
I stuck the landing, Tom. I did.
Nice. You stuck the landing, and folks are tuning in because this is Let's Talk Melrose. Melrose, a show where Melrosians talk to Melrosians about Melrose, and there's lots to talk about again this week. City Council meetings ongoing. We're going to get to that after we do the check-in and other news in town. So, how was everybody's weekend?
Nice. I think two of us were out of the zip code, right?
Yep.
Tom, are you around or?
Both in and out. So I went down to Providence, Rhode Island. My daughter Annalise had a tennis match at Rhode Island College, so we went down there and saw that. It was a nice day for that.
Nice.
And then came immediately back to the zip code.
Because you missed it.
Yep.
right.
I took a much belated trip with just John. We left the kids behind with Grammy for 3 nights. We went to Charleston, South Carolina. So that was a very cool city. But Melrose did not leave my mind because there was certainly a lot going on back home.
Right. And I landed in the beautiful Berkshires part of the state for the weekend.
Nice.
Hiking, foliage, colors, all that kind of stuff. It was nice.
Nice.
Leaf peeping. You were leaf peeping.
Oh,
Leaf
Tom,
peeping, I was.
peeping Tom.
Yep. There you go. Same as every day.
All right, great. Well, should we get
Yeah.
should we get to the news?
Are we going? All right, let's do
I
it.
don't know. Why not? Oh my gosh. Well, I did want to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day. So
Yes.
thank you to those who were here before us, and we are grateful for you and for what you've done for our community.
Mhm.
So
And just acknowledging the history that is overlooked for so long. I do feel glad that Melrose and the state have decided to.
yes. Oh, and you know what else? I wasn't sure I had to have anything more to say, but I had an interesting conversation at work today about using the state seal, of which I believe 55 cities and towns have voted to not use the seal anymore because it is offensive. But the state is still under discussion, I guess. It's pending legislation to see whether the state will be removing the seal and redoing it. So that
Do you mean the flag? The seal on the flag?
Yeah.
With a flying arm that has a sword on it?
That's the one.
Yeah.
So I had a colleague who was concerned because we removed it from some of our official correspondence, and she wasn't sure what to do. And I said, well, sometimes I take it and I put it to the corner and I remove it and remove as much imagery as I possibly can until this is figured out. Because, but it was anyways a fascinating conversation right at the heels of Indigenous Peoples Day weekend.
Right.
So,
Oh, nice.
thank you. All right, Memorial Hall. I've seen that. I've driven past.
It's all wrapped up.
It's under construction.
Well, the envelope, Tom. It's what they call the envelope, I think.
Oh, I didn't know
the
that.
exterior of the building. Yes.
Yeah. So the library and the Memorial Hall both are going to be sort of closed and under renovation, and then opening near each other.
I'm not sure. So let's not spread rumors. I'm not sure Memorial Hall is closed at all. I think there's like upcoming concerts and a lot of events, but they are doing some repair work around the exterior, which I think we helped fund in a way because we had the famous organist here who held a blockbuster show recently, which raised funds for that. So I think we are contributing in some way to the whole restoration.
I misspoke. You're right. It's open, but
great questions. And maybe we should have Bill Butler come on. and tell us
Yes.
all about it. He's a part of the Friends of Memorial Hall. So
Nice.
and the high school and I believe other parts of the public school district are still struggling with their internet, which is where a lot of teaching and learning actually happens during the school day, and also how parents and staff communicate. So hopefully that will get worked out.
Do we know if parents sort of know about this or generally communicate? I mean, it's a serious question.
I read the so
my
for
kids are
the
not in
city
school anymore.
for the city council special meeting tonight, they released an agenda packet, and there was a couple of letters in there, and one of the I think it was a parent was frustrated with the schools, not only for the budget reasons, but also for this issue, which she had said was like since the beginning of the year. That's
Yes.
a long time,
Yep.
and was equally frustrated, or at least mentioned among her frustrations that hadn't been kind of communicated. So I don't really know what's going on. I don't have kids in the school system, but
Right.
that sounds like a long time to have internet issues, which are necessary to do your work.
Yes. And the first official notification from the schools was on October 6th, so 5 days ago.
Oh, geez.
And it may say, as you know, MPS has been experiencing intermittent internet connectivity issues over the past 3 weeks. So anyway, it goes into, I should forward this on to the CIO in the room
Right.
for your diagnostic evaluation.
And
We're aware of the problem and working diligently to resolve it. I'm sure that's what it says.
That's what's going to happen. Jen LeClaire is not here tonight. We miss her, but I'm sure she'd have a lot to say because she has a high school student. So I imagine, I don't know if it's true, but I imagine the older kids have a harder time with no internet service at school because you're making notes, you're taking notes, you're sharing work, and you're doing whatever
Right.
else you're doing.
Right.
So.
Yes.
Too bad.
Cool.
Next up.
Bueller. So the Chamber of Commerce is hosting a job fair November 2nd at the Knights of Columbus. I don't really know much more about this, but maybe we should have Stephanie Nelson come on and give us a chamber update and a Kindness Day update. But I'll look for more information for that. Or when Jen returns next week, she can tell you all about it.
we missed her expertise.
But there seems to be a lot going on around town in the next few weeks. So I'll put some notes on here, but also encourage folks to sign up to the Melrose Creative Alliance email digest.
Yes.
Which I have signed up for to get.
Excellent.
Excellent.
So
there's a ton of stuff on the arts community going on. We can go through quickly, but there's a lot of stuff happening around town. The Melrose Windows Art Walk is happening now through October 23rd. A couple more weeks, it sounds like, to have a chance to see that. Walk along Main Street and other parts of downtown to see some of the art that's happening in the windows. 2 programs on the 13th of October. I don't know much about the first one. Sam, do you know about the first one?
I don't, but it sounds like we should. It sounds fascinating. Forgotten Nations virtual program at the library. I do know the one on the 15th. So this weekend, the marching band is having the competition of the weekend will be here in Melrose. So at Fred Green Field from 5 to 8, Melrose plays around 7:35. So head on down for that. That was a lot of fun last year when we went.
Yeah.
I think it was on the same day as Porch Fest last year.
But was it?
Yeah.
But I have been like once to that competition event. It's a lot of fun. It was cool.
Okay. Tom Catalina, are you participating in the show, or what do you?
I don't know a lot about these events other than to say there's a lot going on in town. Looks like Lisa's Pizza is on the 19th. If you mention the Melrose Band, you'll further be able to support the band. So that seems like a good thing to do. Mystery Night Out. I think one of you has participated in this, so you could probably talk about that.
I have not, but you have, Sam, right?
Yes, I've been twice. It's awesome. We had Kim LaFontana on the show a few weeks ago talking about. It's a fun night if you have a partner, especially if you're semi-introverted like I am, to go with a buddy.
We talked about this, you and I, because that's right.
It's a lot of fun to go into someone else's house with a theme. I highly recommend it. It's a good night out.
So quickly, the mystery night part is you don't know where you're going until the day of, right, or the afternoon of, or something.
I'm not sure how far in advance. But yeah, you're assigned a mystery house and someone is hosting you that you may or may not know, and you may or may not know some of the people there. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's kind of fun.
And then on October 23rd, at around 4:00, it starts the 27th annual Mave Walk, Melrose Alliance Against Violence Walk and Vigil will be happening. And Lincoln, if any Lincoln Lions are listening, we will have a team, so meet us out there. But it's a beautiful event. And then there were performances along the route, which is also kind of fun.
And how long is the walk, distance-wise?
I read somewhere 2 miles, but it doesn't feel like it. It feels
I thought it was like a half marathon.
You're on Melrose 10 times, and
right.
And that's a 4 p.m. start, correct?
Yes.
4 p.m. start on the 23rd for that walk.
Yep.
Nice.
Let me put the link up here. Nope. It's up here somewhere. All right, I'll put it up. But definitely do that. Mave is an amazing organization and deserves all of our support. Oh.
There we go.
All right, you're not going to talk about the mental health series. You're going to share that link.
We did last
talked
week.
about that before on the show. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I'll tell you how it went because it starts next week.
I tried to sign up maybe to a session next week, and I'm on the waiting list. So they're filling up. They're filling up. So
good.
Yeah,
Glad to hear
but
that.
there's like 4 different sessions, so I don't think they're all full. All right, we're ready to talk about the big news topic. First, I have to give you a voice from the past here.
And so we're now in phase 2 of the news cycle. How did this happen, and was it legal?
That's, of course, a clip from my new source for sound bites, was the horse race, Steve Koczela hosting there. Which, by the way, I want to give another shout out. Listen to their most recent episode, and we'll talk about the ballot questions at some point on our show. But they went over question 1 and 3 in detail, like, it's 10-minute podcast or something. There's not a lot of time, but you really got to hear both sides and how the questions were constructed, because those things are always confusing to me. So highly recommend the horse race latest episode.
Yeah, we'll have to have
next one that's coming up.
We should have Steve on and just tell us what they're all about.
What's going on?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think I know 1, 2, and 4 well enough. What was 3? Do you remember?
3 is the one where there's no opposition to it. This is about the retail liquor licenses and how many one organization can have. And it was this interesting story how Cumberland Farms was going to make this push to have more licenses, and the mom and pop retailers actually proposed their own initiative to try and get ahead of it. And the Cumberland Farms didn't go through, and blah, blah, blah. So you get the whole rundown on the horse race podcast. But it was interesting. There's actually nobody opposing question 3.
Awesome.
As it turns out.
I like that. That's easy.
Isn't it nice when we can all just get along?
We all just get along.
I think we can do it.
All right. All right. So was there a meeting tonight of some sort, I guess? Did I hear
City
that?
Council. Sam did some remote reporting. She was in the room, so maybe you should kick us off and tell us what you thought. It's still going on, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sure. So on our show last week, we talked about the $2.2 million budget shortfall from from last fiscal year that from our school budget, and we talked about not having enough information and then learning about this very late. So July 12th was when the superintendent was notified officially that this was a real problem. And then I just jumped ahead to September 27th when the public was informed. So before tonight, so the meeting was scheduled after the 27th by City Council President Chris Sinella. Hi, Mrs. Sinella, if you're watching. I hear you like the Toms the best. I won't tell which Tom.
There we go.
Oh, sorry, because you know why? Because Steve was too low, so now the volume's off for everything else.
Anyway, so we talked a little bit. We digested a little bit on the show last week, and so there was a special meeting held tonight at 7 p.m. In the chamber, and City Council was there to ask some questions of the superintendent, Kuchenberger, as well as the CFO for the city, Patrick Della Russo, and also the new finance director for the schools. And even before this meeting, I think it was this evening, we did get an email from the mayor. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll dive into that a little bit, but I'll set the scene for the evening. So I did see a friend of the show, Ward Hamilton, was there in the front row. He has grown a beard, so it took me a little bit to recognize him.
Oh.
So he was there. Behind him was a row of friends. I didn't know any of them except yet, except for the end was Cal Finicchiaro was on there. She's Winthrop mom, who also a friend of the show. Towards the back, there was Jessica Dugan, who was sitting with another row of friends. So it was a full house. There were some empty seats available. On the other side, fan of the show, Eric Wildman was present. Sandy Dixon, also fan of the show podcast. There were 4 members of the school committee right in front of us. Ed, Margaret, Jen McAndrew, and Jen Rosie Thomas were sitting together. Cheryl Ringen came in a little bit later. And then in our row, we had Jackie Lavender Bird, Eugenia Gibbons, Jo Ellen, who's a teacher from the Hoover, Allison Sarnowski, me, and then Mayor Paul Broder. So I was really nestled in into our little section amongst the dignitaries. So it was exciting.
Well, you were the most dignitary of them all, I would say. Representing LTMM.
Well, I tried to lean over without being too creepy to see if I could get on TV.
You are on TV, man.
Well, no,
Tuesday at 8:30.
The mayor was kind enough to offer me a warm Coke or a cold Diet Coke, so I appreciate that. I declined. But
there's no right answer to that question. That was a good.
But the meeting, so
the meeting, yes. I'm sorry. I had to set the stage. It was interesting. But so another interesting piece was a lot of folks there have very strong opinions on all of these issues, and yet there was one person in the room to speak at public comment. I think to me that means that everybody just wanted to get into it and hear what the superintendent had to the answers that she was going to give to the questions that were submitted by the city council last week. And that one speaker for public comment was our own Eugenia Gibbons.
So I would say that she made a great, concise, clear, comprehensive comment, including responding to the mayor's note that came out just like an hour before the meeting. So Eugenia represented herself, I think, very well, and thoughts of a lot of people, and of course the show, because she's a former co-host. And I just want to add a couple of notes too, because I was watching from home. So Sam is telling you what it's like to be in the room. I was at home. We were texting back and forth, and I was like, "Oh my God, it's really difficult to hear what's going on." And I realized I was on the advertised Zoom link, which is part of the agenda, and I think where you would go to log in if you wanted to speak with public comment. So I think there's a reason for that. But I was like, this is really not going to be super productive for me or super useful. So I went over to mmtv3.org where they live streamed the meeting, and the picture and sound quality was like far superior. So for those in the audience, if you're not able to go down there and get in the mix with Sam and the dignitaries, and you are going to be remote like me, again, MMTV really kind of coming through on that. And that was, so I wasn't intending to get into the queue to comment or anything like that, but the Zoom thing was really a little dicey from my perspective, and the MMTV was rock solid. So just a tip for those of us remote.
And who was sitting next to you at home, Tom?
The usual people.
The usual crowd.
Yes, I was in the same company that I've become accustomed to. Yes.
So again, questions. I'm curious. I have questions about the questions and the comments.
Excellent.
Meeting.
So yes, so back to Eugenia's points. She did peel apart some of the mayor's email that he sent around some of the reasons as to how we got here. I highly recommend listening back to that. She talked about how, I think I sent it over, but let me see my notes. She was just fantastic. She used the word complicit. And I want to make sure I quote correctly.
And part of it was certainly like about the framing of the points and the communication points, which I also had an issue with. But one of them was one of my points was this keeps being talked about as a budget shortfall, which I keep scratching my head at that. It's really an overspend without being aware that you're overspending. So I thought, Tom, a lot of the communication was still kind of frustrating, and a lot of the things that have been put out in print are kind of like, well, there's not much to see here. It's under control. There was an issue, but we've kind of got it covered. I thought in the early questioning, what came out more clearly was the timeline. So some of the first questions I thought were very appropriate about, like, okay, there's this July 12th comment and then September 27th. We didn't hear anything, like what happened. And you did get to hear from Dr. Kuchenberger. Quite frankly, I think this is stuff she should have maybe put in the memo. I mean, everything's sort of this button down official stuff to make it seem like everything's under control. But, she was like away at a conference when she got a call from the new finance director and said, this is what's going on. And then they tried to call in, the accounting firm right away, but they weren't immediately available in the middle of July. So August 1st was the first appointment. So you got a little bit more of a feel for it, because it just sounds very stark when you hear these dates. So
just hear the dates only. Yeah.
And then
so you got,
I was saying at one
then,
point somebody said they got COVID and went on vacation, and then another week was lost. I couldn't hear who that was, but
but there were some good questions that kind of affirmed, like, people were in communication. So she knew about it. So something was going on, and it takes a little bit of time to get your arms around it. But there was communication with school committee members, with, the city, with the mayor, a number of people going on, and they were trying to figure out what they were dealing with before they could announce. She talked about like, well, you don't want to go out too early before you don't know what's going on, and get their arms around it and be able to explain and communicate it clearly. They even talked about, she said, about a communication strategy. So you got more of a feel for it, but I still sort of disagree, I guess, with the approach. I think they would have been better off, something happened, and we have to deal with it. The other thing is, as I was watching the individual questioning of the counselors, it gets messy and in the weeds and confusing really quickly. And there was a lot of detail thrown around, but this is like a fundamental failure of financial internal controls.
Yeah.
right.
And it's a finding of the auditors from 5 years ago that was like never permanently fixed. So this is the thing that I think erodes the confidence of anybody paying any level of attention to it. And I think there's a continuing failure of anybody being able to explain clearly and crisply, like, this is what happened, and this is the situation, and here we go. Now, we've all worked wherever we've worked during the pandemic, during some of the most financially trying times since 2008, 2009, right? So there's a couple times in my life now, there have been like these really stark moments, and that's like a financial type situation, those two things, and most recently the pandemic. And we've probably all worked somewhere where the finance team has really had a rough time and has had to communicate, what's happened. And I've been fortunate to be close to some really excellent finance teams that have a way of explaining the fundamentals. And there's also kind of a narrative story that flows through this. So you have to be able to, get it across in a few minutes so that somebody can get a handle on it and understand it and feel like, maybe more importantly, feel like you understand it and have control of the situation. And I sort of, as a viewer, don't see that happening yet. It just feels like we're digging in deeper, and we're going. One of the counselors asked about, like, the prior years and, like, is it really fixed? Like, it's just, to me, it's not confidence instilling at this point yet. I don't know.
Yep.
Yeah, I've been through it at work. The organization had a couple of years of in the red numbers, and unexpected, heavily in the red numbers. And it's jarring for the staff. It's jarring for the people who are around you working and trying to make progress every single day, to know, what does this mean now for the future? So what happens next? And I think communication is one of the most important things to be able to maintain. And we didn't have that at my job when we had this happen to us. And so it makes you feel less in control and less able to help or understand what's going on. And it also feeds into this narrative, which is just human nature, I guess, but it feeds into this narrative of like, how much trust do we mete out to this person now? Because I don't know what to think, because one day everything's great and the next day everything's not, and so that's not typically how financial problems happen, right? They happen over time, and you track revenue, you track spending, and you have a sense of what's going on. They don't just open the door one day and have a totally different story than the day before, like this.
See, that's the thing. That's exactly it. So like none of us are unfamiliar with financial problems, particularly in recent years, right? But the fact that you didn't know about it is the thing that's like, well, wait a minute.
Right.
Like,
So that was, they probed a lot on that. Maya Jamaldeen brought it up. Ryan Williams did as well in his line of questioning about how are we going, what are the financial controls that you're now going to put in place so that this doesn't happen in the future? And it was things like, well, we're going to have a public monthly accounting of the current
novel
state.
idea.
Cool. Appreciate that. And I mean, those are things that, again, you can't look back, but these are what healthy organizations and unhealthy organizations just do automatically.
I mean, if you built me a house and it fell over and you said, all right, well, you know what? Don't worry about it. We'll build you another one and it'll be good this time. And how are we going to solve it? Well, we'll have weekly meetings and, we'll discuss it more openly. Like, how about we follow the code and construction best practices and, all the things that are set up to make that house not fall over. That's where I'm struggling with this.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate that this is pushing a sizable transformation in the way that this body operates and the accountability that the school committee will have, and especially on the finance side of being, I mean, maybe it should have been there.
But the biggest thing, the double counting of the grants, like the single biggest issue was a finding 5 years ago. 5 years ago, that was like, so if you're not familiar with a financial audit, like a finding is a big deal. That's like the outside auditors come and check on your finance team and they send a report to the top executive, and like, you don't want findings, or you want them to be pretty immaterial if there is something, maybe it's a technicality or something. So that's a weak finance group in my view, I think. And it's a weak organization that can't respond to that. Like, we used, I don't know anything about construction, but we used, don't use 1x2s. You're supposed to use 2x4s. I don't even know if there is a 1x2. And then okay, yeah, sure. That's fine. Great. And then like 2 years later, you catch me using the same, 1x2s instead of 2x4s. It'd be like what? Like, what's wrong? Like, what, why was that not fixed?
Was there any sense from, well, I mean, you were in the room, Sam, was there any sense of like how the city council was feeling, or like was there any reaction, or were they sort of accepting, and was there any? There
were some grimaces and some questions and nodding and shaking and nothing dramatic. So I heard Councillor Garapay, Councillor Stewart, Jamaldeen, Williams, and then I had to go. And I think Councillor Garapay came out strong in the beginning because he did ask he asked about the problem at hand. And then he also asked about the problem with the process at hand. Right. So he wanted
very
to
good
know,
questioning.
Yes, I thought so too. He wanted to know at what time, when did people know, who did you engage with when you found out there was a problem, and when did they get pulled into conversations? And although we didn't quite get like to specific dates, I think, some of the speculation that we had last week around like somebody must have known something on the school committee. Yeah. They didn't just find out on September 27th. And some of the counselors did find out on September 27th, but I don't know, did all of them find out on September 27th? And again, back to Eugenia's comment about being complicit, although I don't know if the word appreciate is not the right one. I insert verb here, that there was some conversation around that was intentional to delay communication to the community until they had more facts. That is still would not have been the strongest choice, in my opinion. And just adds to the eroding of trust.
Right.
And so,
Well, they immediately knew it was out of control. So when Dr. K had explained, I was told this and that up until these meetings, and it's like she was like, well, she kind of knew about some material overspec. Like, so the things she cites as contributing factors, like the 4 or 5 big things, there was awareness of those, but then she was still told, like, you know what, we're going to have like a surplus of money and extra money we have to figure out how to spend. And she was like, she used some word in the meeting, like I was pleasantly surprised by that. And I was like scratching my head at home. I go, but that's when you're supposed to press as the executive to say, well, I don't understand that, because here's 3 or 4 things I know about that are way higher than we expected. How could we possibly end up, like, you have to push back or have some engagement. And so I'm always frustrated by the top executive not having I guess a good grasp on the financial. The finances to me are the foundation, and maybe
right.
that's just my view, but that's like everything goes through the finances at the end of the day, and like you have to have a handle on that.
Yes.
It's the health of the entire system. It's
Right.
the health of the system, right?
That's the only way you can do things. So Tom, you shampoo, both of you, but shampoo might appreciate. I was at 4:51 today. We received this message from the mayor addressing the concerns connected to the budget shortfall, and I like was able to take like a deep breath at that moment, because finally something was coming out, and so I was clamoring to open it as quickly as possible. And I just wish, so I was peeling apart the communication. I wish this was sent 2.5 months ago.
Yeah.
And I think I was trying to be critical about which parts of this would have satisfied me as a constituent, taxpayer, parent, if I had received this in July.
Yeah.
And I feel like maybe just the parts of the first paragraph and the last would have, it would have been jarring that we have, again, this problem at hand. But and he does address those who are recognize people who may have wanted to hear about the situation sooner. Well, yes.
You mean the framing, the last point about, it's contained, and it's not the city isn't in a crazy financial situation, or when he got critique for that tonight, and maybe that was part of Eugenia's thing about the bond ratings,
Yeah.
And I think, but you make a great point that the timing makes a difference, and that kind of framing actually would have helped in July, that like, hey, this is actually pretty bad and we don't understand it yet, but it's contained, and we're going to be okay, and we'll figure this out. But the root problem was, I think, pretty bad.
Yeah.
But the timing of the messaging, would be better earlier.
But just to put a point on that third bullet on the mayor's letter, or his statement, the city, the 2.2 is now covered. Apparently, it's been accounted for. It's in the past anyway. It was last year's fiscal year. There's no carryover for this fiscal year that they're saying, at least right now.
Yep.
And then the city used ARPA funds to get to the end point, so that we're back to zero again. So it's been sort of handled, but we still don't know some answers to questions like who knew what, when, and how important is that, and how are we going to rebuild trust with those of us who feel like it needs to be rebuilt.
Right. And to me, some people call that a red herring. Like, who cares who knew what? That's not the point.
Yeah.
To me, that is part of this. So our friend of the show, Finn McSweeney, sent out a tweet on October 7th, and I did go take a look at it today. It was an entire thread about Melrose has a thin budget, hold people accountable. But the conversation on the path forward is already at extreme risk of being commandeered and corrupted by the set of folks still angry about the Red Raider decision. And so he goes on about some of the past parts of the Halloween fiasco, and then the Red Raider the I don't want to say conspiracy, but the Red Raider mascot conversation. And then you'll hear the same language around transparency, accountability. But it's important we correct these mistakes, and there were mistakes made. But we're also there. So anyway, I wanted to at least address that, because I don't necessarily agree that people are they're angry at progressives in decision-making capacity in Melrose, and that might be true for some and some of the issues here. But I don't agree that. I said to him that I am a progressive, and I'm also mad. I'm also mad at this one.
Yeah, so it might be more. I might land better about the override, right? So if you were like anti-override, this would be a lot of fuel about exactly what you were worried about. But I don't know if that maps exactly to progressive conservative viewpoints on Halloween and other things.
And to me, it's there are going to be people who are going to find a way to battle or a way to express their frustration with another example that may not connect in some ways, but they want to connect it just because they want to have a bigger hammer to swing, maybe, And so, to me, that feels more like politics. If people are saying let's fix it, it sounds like it's been addressed. There are questions lingering, but again, we've discussed that. So it really just comes down to a matter of how do people feel when it comes to the leadership that are there in place, handling our finances moving forward. Do we trust them? Do we feel like we know what's going to happen in the coming year? And do we feel like everyone can move forward? That's my question for the meeting tonight too. How did that play? Did people feel like, is there another meeting that's going to happen? Is it over? What's the next step?
So next up is it's still going, right?
It's still going.
So next up, next Tuesday night is the school committee is getting together, and they're going to hear the full financial report and accounting from the firm that they hired to review everything. It's still going on. Let's see, they're looking to the left, so I don't know.
Maybe there's an LTMM screen on the left, and they're all watching LTMM.
I think another thing that maybe is helpful, Tom, or if there's something a silver lining in here for sure that comes to the forefront for me, it's just your local government in action, and there's a fundamental design of checks and balances that is working, right? Yeah. So the fact that the city council called a special meeting and said, "Hey, we're another government body here that has a role in it, particularly around the budget and appropriations, and we want to hear about this in a way that so they've got a legitimate standing, and they're there to do exactly what they're doing tonight." And so we're seeing some of that design play out, and I think that's in some ways to be celebrated, right? So it's nice to have this this balance of the different responsibilities and powers within the city structure. Yep.
I agree. I was very grateful that the city council called this meeting. It looks like they're getting up. So I appreciate that there was some urgency behind finding out more facts as our fiduciary agents, as our representatives up there, determining where our tax dollars go. I appreciate that they found that there was a necessity to start the conversation. Now we're catching up, right? We are just learning things that other people knew this whole time. So of course we're going to have questions. And I'm just grateful that Councilor Sanella called this meeting so that we could hear some of the answers for information that some people have known this whole time. So we're all just catching up.
Yeah. Anyway. And I guess the other point that was made that I thought landed well in that area was just about the city budget transparency overall. And so Ryan was pointing out that, like, compared to Reading, which he held out as like as a good example of being able to just make it accessible and understandable to the public. I don't know if I completely agree with him that you should be able to look at this super complex thing and have a glance in 5 minutes and sort of understand it. Like, I think that's a little bit too much, but at different times I've gone to look at some of the details, actually around the override and other things. If you get interested and you want to engage, and then you kind of get discouraged because you can't pull it apart and you can't understand it.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's saying that other cities are doing a much better job at that, I think, is something to look at.
It's funny because I was looking at the budget too just a couple of days ago. It's 55 pages long, and the first page is just page 1 of 55, meaning there's like a summary. Like I'm thinking through, like, what would I want to know in a minute or in 90 seconds, and so I'm sure there's better ways to do certain things. And people are doing what they can, I guess. But yeah, there's probably an opportunity to inform more people, especially when people are looking at budget questions specifically now. So where does a school budget land on that 55-page document?
So Scott Barney asked, how's this year tracking? I'm going to put a link into the city budget page on the website, and you tell us.
And Conchetta Green is going to come and give us a presentation. I think it's not that hard to tell the story, but she's right. I like this part about the story. Like there's like great CFOs that I've worked for. Like there's always a narrative, right? There's the numbers and there's analysis, but there's always a narrative. There's always a story to be told to put that all into context and to give those numbers life and meaning.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
John asked about how we're tracking in the current fiscal year, which was a question that was asked during the meeting. Since we're 3 months into the year,
right?
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, because we were listening at the same time. But I think they're still trying to suss things out. They're zeroing out the budget and rebuilding it. She's meeting with principals again to talk about personnel and staffing and needs at these schools. So we're gonna have to wait and find out, I guess, right?
Hopefully the professionals have a better story next week, right? Because I don't think this is something where you've got to get to the bottom of it and have some organized methodology to go through this sort of thing. This shouldn't be like invented on the fly,
right?
And it feels a little disorganized now. And this firm is hopefully going to present that. At the same time, I am wondering, quite honestly, because their credibility is that they've worked with the city for 7 years, and also now I'm kind of wondering, that's over the term of these problems. So I don't know exactly what their role is. That's probably not fair to them, but we have to figure out how. But I don't think there was a clear answer how we're tracking. It's like,
right.
we're re-looking at everything, right now.
Okay. Well, glad we could have a chance to talk more about it tonight.
Yeah, all right. And so we'll follow the next meeting, and then after that, there'll be more information out there, and we'll have a chance to process it, and we'll have some guests on the show, and we can talk it out a little bit more as we learn more.
Great.
Yep. It's I have a massive stress headache from all of this, and I just sat there, so I can't imagine. It's a lot of pressure sitting at those desks and at that table that the superintendent, the others had to sit at. You're under a microscope, and I don't envy them for that.
No, but it's part of the job. That's the job, right? So,
yeah. Yes.
All right. Well.
All right. So, with that, we will all be listening to the horse race and clipping more sound bites between now and the future end of time. And until then, we will see you in the chambers, and we'll see you around town.